The government plans new tobacco control measures, including outlawing e-cigarettes completely and banning smoking while in the queue. Police arrested the king of judicial reviews on suspicion of benefit fraud. And Putin says Russia could provide missiles to others to hit Western targets. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. The government proposed 10 short-term tobacco control measures today with the aim of further reducing the prevalence of smoking in the city. The government hopes to implement the measures in 2025. The Mosengai reports.
The current prevalence of smoking among the city's population is 9.1%. The government, however, is aiming to bring that down to 7.8% by next year. In a press conference today, authorities said they will implement 10 tobacco control measures in the short term to help people quit smoking. The measures can be categorized into 4 groups: those that regulate the supply of cigarettes, ban the advertisement of tobacco, expand smoking-free zones, and enhance public education. Among the proposed measures aiming to reduce the supply of cigarettes are a total ban on alternative tobacco products, a labeling system for duty-paid cigarettes, and a prohibition of offering tobacco products to minors.
We want to protect our youngsters, our next generation. So what we are doing now is actually an education process, a behavioral change.
Offering free tobacco products to minors can cause great harm to the health of our young people.
The government proposed a ban on flavored cigarettes. A proposal to ensure all types of cigarettes display warnings about health risks associated with smoking them on their packaging has also been suggested. People will not be allowed to smoke while they are queuing up in several scenarios, such as queuing for public transport and waiting to enter public hospitals.
Queuing is a behavior that we Hong Kong citizens is very familiar with. We will work out with our lawyers during the drafting stage on how best we could institute this concept into our proposed legislation.
The government will beef up public education on the harmful impacts of smoking and increase services to help smokers quit the habit. The government said they will consider implementing the middle-phase tobacco control measures in 2026 after revealing the effectiveness of the short-term control measures. Members 9, TVB News.
The policy elicited mixed views among smokers, non-smokers, and vendors. As the government is looking set to pass the amended tobacco control policies within this legislative year, some citizens expressed concerns about the slew of new measures. Mr. Chan here said while the move is well-intentioned, the government should not impose a blanket ban on all tobacco products, as people should be able to make their own choices. Mr. To said although he's a smoker, he is more concerned about the clarity of information in terms of policy details and enforcement. The Hong Kong newspaper Hawker Association said its members' income from cigarette sales mainly comes from flavored tobacco products, and they are expecting a notable dip in the relevant revenue after tobacco control measures are stepped up. The association's chairman Lam Cheng-fu said hawkers are only allowed to sell 12 types of products now. Apart from cigarettes, they also sell candies, chewing gums, batteries, and pens. He hopes the government will relax the scope of products they are allowed to put on sale, including portable chargers, which can also provide more convenience to tourists. Executive Council member Lam Ching-choi, who's also a pediatrician, said the ban on flavored cigarettes can further guard teenagers from getting into smoking. As for expanding the non-smoking areas, Lam said it doesn't just rely on law enforcement personnel or the Tobacco and Alcohol Control Office under the Department of Health, but also on citizens monitoring each other, especially in private premises such as restaurants. Lawmaker Chan Hui-yan, who chairs the Legislative Council's panel on health affairs, said the government should take an extra step to identify students who are prone to get into smoking as early as possible. Police arrested Kwok Cha-kin, a retired civil servant who is nicknamed the King of Judicial Reviews, on suspicion of benefit fraud. The 85-year-old has now been released on bail. Police allege that between 2013 and 2022, Kwok made false statements and provided false information to conceal his personal income and assets in order to receive government subsidies and welfare. They include public housing, the old age living allowance, and legal aid. Kwok is required to report to Cheungchao Police Station in late June. The Biden administration in the U.S. has approved the sale of F-16 fighter jet spare and repair parts to Taiwan for an estimated $80 million. The Pentagon's Defense and Security Cooperation Agency said the sale will help improve the security of the recipient and assist in maintaining political stability, military balance, and economic progress in the region. The island thanked the United States and said the sale would boost the combat and defense needs of its Air Force. The sale is set to be finalized in July. Beijing has repeatedly stated that sales of arms by the U.S. to Taiwan have seriously undermined China's national sovereignty and security interests and severely disrupted peace and stability in the region. Russian President Vladimir Putin has conducted his first interview with the international media since the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. On the sidelines of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, Putin warned that Russia could provide long-range weapons to others to strike Western targets in response to NATO allies, allowing Ukraine to use their arms to attack Russian territory. Putin also reaffirmed Moscow's readiness to use nuclear weapons if it sees a threat to its sovereignty. However, he insists he does not want war with NATO. Nasby Karim has more.
Вы сбрендили совсем, что ли? Тупые вообще, как этот стол.
Pointing to his head and knocking twice on the table, Russian President Vladimir Putin tells a journalist that someone must be thick or dumb, as thick as this table, to think that Russia wants to attack NATO. They invented that Russia wants to attack NATO, Putin said. That's nonsense, delirious nonsense. It would be nonsense if it were not designed to fool Western countries' own populations. Putin was answering questions from the international media for the first time since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Appearing confident and in control for more than 3 hours, Putin sought to counter the Russian imperialist narrative that has been portrayed in the Western press. The Russian leader, who recently won a 5th term in office, also warned that he has all the right to deploy long-range weapons within striking distance of the US and Europe, after the US and Germany said they would allow Ukraine to use their weapons inside Russian territory. Putin said these include the use of nuclear weapons, according to Moscow's 2020 policy. For some reason, they believe in the West that Russia will never use nuclear weapons, said Putin. We have our nuclear doctrine. Look at what is written there. If somebody's action will threaten our sovereignty and territorial integrity, we will consider it possible to use all means at our disposal. On Russia's ties with Beijing, Putin pushed back on Western claims that China's economy is not market-oriented. The Chinese economy is very reliable and is becoming more and more high-tech, Putin said. It is a big mistake on the part of the United States and some European countries who are trying to somehow slow down the Chinese economy, because in my view, in order to be successful, we should be integrated into these processes, not to try to hinder them. Putin was also asked about November's US presidential election, likely between incumbent Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, who is seen as more Russia-friendly. Putin said he would work with any US president, but said Trump's recent criminal conviction in the hush money affair shows Washington is using the judicial system in an internal political struggle. Reporters also asked him about the Wall Street Journal journalist Evan Gershkovich, who was detained more than a year ago and charged with espionage, which he denies. Putin said the US is taking energetic steps to gain his release, suggesting that a prisoner swap may be one solution. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
An Israeli strike today on a school-turned-shelter in central Gaza killed at least 35 people, including several children. The Israeli military said the building was being used as a Hamas compound, but Gaza authorities rejected the claims. The strike came after Israel said it was launching new air and ground operations in central Gaza, with an international medical group reported soaring casualties. The Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Balah received at least 30 bodies from the strike on the school and another 6 from a separate strike on a home. The school was run by UNRWA, the United Nations Palestinian Agency. The Israeli military claimed that Hamas and the Islamic Jihad used the school as cover for their operations. Welcome back. Veterans and world leaders will meet in Normandy, France today to mark the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings. On June 6, 1944, more than 150,000 Allied soldiers arrived by sea and air to drive out the forces of Nazi Germany. Tracy Furness has more.
As the sun rose over Arromanches in France Thursday morning, a military piper played a lament at the exact moment 80 years ago the first UK personnel landed on Gold Beach. On neighboring Utah Beach, a US military flyby, and US Navy SEALs parachute in, reenacting the landing of the 2nd Naval Beach Battalion alongside descendants of US soldiers who landed on the beach, as hundreds of people looked on. American World War II veterans were greeted by residents in Saint-Mère-Église as they paraded through the streets of the Normandy town. Charlie Brooking is one of a dwindling number of aging military veterans that made it this year to France.
Oh, everything is fine today for a 98-year-old. I just can't believe the turnout and generosity of all the people. God bless everyone.
It was overwhelming. I enjoyed every moment of it, but probably others deserve it more.
Britain's Princess Anne attended an annual D-Day service of Thanksgiving at Bayeux Cathedral in Normandy. Following the service, a procession of 200 VIPs walked to Bayeux War Cemetery for a candlelit vigil, where 4,600 graves of World War II military personnel were illuminated. US President Joe Biden arrived in Paris Wednesday morning ahead of his visit to the Normandy beaches and the graves of US soldiers. On Friday, Biden will speak at Pointe du Hoc, a spot on the French coast where US Army Rangers scaled cliffs to overcome Nazi defences. And Britain's King Charles III, Queen Camilla, Prince William and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak attended a commemorative event in Portsmouth on Wednesday. They will also attend commemorative events in France today to remember the sacrifices made by troops on D-Day.
It is our duty to ensure that we and future generations do not forget their service and their sacrifice in replacing tyranny with freedom. Our rights and the liberty won at such terrible cost bring with them responsibilities to others in the exercise of that liberty.
Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Back locally, red minibus drivers possibly going green. This as minibus trade representatives reviewed the Transport Department is planning to relax conditions for red minibuses to switch to fixed routes reserved for green minibuses without tendering. As of late last year, some 790 red minibuses shuttled 157,000 passengers every day. That's much lower than the green minibus's daily average of 1.3 million passengers. The government has been encouraging red minibuses to make the switch, as taking the fixed routes for green minibuses will allow more effective regulation and ensure their quality of service. In a meeting between the minibus trade and the Transport Department last week, the government reportedly told the operators about its intention to relax the red to green scheme. The government is planning to invite operators of around 11 of the 70 approved routes under the $2 fare concession scheme to convert their red minibus routes into fixed ones without going through the open bidding process. Shi Ngai-Pang, a red minibus representative of the Motor Transport Workers General Union, said, as red minibuses are supposed to be able to do business everywhere, the fixed route arrangement could strip them of such flexibility. Another concern, will that encroach on the business of existing green minibuses? Ling Chi-Kern, chairman of the Public Light Bus General Association, doesn't think the impact will be big, as most converted minibuses will likely operate along original routes. The reserve list of names to designate tropical cyclones in the western North Pacific and the South China Sea has been updated. 9 new names are now on the list, including one proposed by Hong Kong, Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai, which refers to Hong Kong's Chiang Mai Bridge, will replace Ma On. It received the second highest number of votes in the name collection activity by the Hong Kong Observatory. The most popular name, Milk Tea, did not make it into the reserve list. The new names introduced to the list are North Korea's Jim Jari, a dragonfly, Japan's Tokay, a clock, Laotian endangered animal ongmang, a deer, and South Korea's 2 entries, gorsari and hodu, which refer to the traditional fern ingredient used in bibimbap and walnut, respectively. The new names were endorsed by the Typhoon Committee, which is under the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific and the World Meteorological Organization. When a tropical cyclone incurred heavy casualties or economic losses, members of the Typhoon Committee can request to retire the cyclone's name and propose replacement names. And the latest climate data show that temperatures are rising, breaking global records for the 12th month in a row. In a speech to coincide with World Environment Day on Wednesday, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called for maximum action ahead of the UN Climate Change Conference in November. He said the need for global action presents unprecedented opportunities for prosperity and sustainability. Danny Zhou has more.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres delivered a speech yesterday to mark World Environment Day, the theme being land restoration, desertification and drought resilience. It came as the European Commission's Copernicus Climate Change Service declared May 2024 as the 12th consecutive month of record-high temperatures. The institution also observed the global average temperature from the past 12-month period was the highest on record, 1.63 degrees Celsius higher than the pre-industrial average. Speaking from the American Museum of Natural History in New York, Guterres cited examples of global warming and extreme weather from around the world, stressing how quickly the world moved off track from stabilizing the climate system. We need an exit ramp off the highway to climate hell, he said as he called for immediate climate action plans from all countries to secure a livable future over the next 18 months. Meanwhile, the UN Weather Agency predicted an 80% chance that average global temperatures will surpass the 1.5 degrees Celsius target under the Paris Climate Accords. It means that global emissions need to fall 9% each year to keep the goal alive. Guterres called for steeper emission cuts, laying out action plans that include clamping down on the oil and gas industry and imposing a windfall tax on the profits of fossil fuel companies.
It's time to put an effective price on carbon and tax the windfall profits of fossil fuel companies. And by COP29, we need early movers to go from exploring to implementing solidarity levies on sections such as shipping, aviation and fossil fuel extraction to help fund climate action.
The UN chief pointed out that developed countries should take more responsibility and strive to close the climate adaptation finance gap in the collective fight against the climate change. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.